First presentations I did here, well, actually the first presentation I did here was about verifying security in your cloud-based applications. And one of my slides is like, hey, here's the things, here's how your organization can be harmed as a result of cybersecurity breach. And there's financial hits, there's regulatory hits, you're going to lose patient, well, in our case, I'm in healthcare, is lose patient data. And so we got all these things that can go bad. But there's ultimately two things that came down as like worst case scenario is, for your organization, the hit is going to be reputation damage and loss of trust. And I was back and forth, what's worse? And it came down loss of trust. Because reputation, you can build your reputation, right? It's how people are seeing you. And you can build that up as an organization. But loss of trust, that's like an emotional thing. As companies, your clients, your customers need to trust you that you're going to be trusting their data, your health care and things. And once people lose trust, it's very hard to get that back. So that's why I believe the focus really needs to be on how you're going to build your security, build that trust, and also you need to be able to verify it for yourself as well as the partners you're working with. And so it's complicated. It's kind of meant to be complicated, but it's also meant to be, here's the building blocks that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about building blocks and capabilities rather than you're just going to pick and choose whatever technology that you'd like. And there's going to be, and at the bottom, you're going to be like, often these cloud-based applications are now connecting to on-prem to get access to data as well as other systems. And we also have our third-party internet, software as a service, our public cloud managed services that, of course, you want to leverage, but we also have to connect with. Third-party software. Just to give you an idea, talking to some of the architects, it's like, with your, quote, custom code, often about like over 90% of your code base in even a custom app is third-party software. So you have to consider that and what are you bringing in and can you trust that and verify that. Then you, like in my case, I also deal with platform services that we have in our health cloud, our Edison cloud, and basically is, you got these layers of services as well. And then we get into applications. We're either going to lift and shift from an on-prem application or build a cloud application. Okay, so these applications are going to leverage various pieces underneath. Solutions are going to bring everything together. And, and our clients are, often it's going to be internet facing. We basically treat them as untrusted, right? So the concept here is you need to build and verify trust up and down the stacks and horizontally and even like cross-vectoring across there. Because what I'm always concerned about is, to quote, the trust chain, if you will, is like, what's the weakest link in all this that can potentially compromise our systems and, in case of our patient data. And from this slide, is there three things I want to get, once you get out of here, is one, it's getting much more and more complicated all the time, our environments that we're building with. Second is you have to build security, trust, and verify that. Third is you need governance in order to make all this happen. It's too complicated to do one-offs. You need governance, security, application, as well as operations. And when you do across it, you're looking at multiple capabilities that spread across this whole complicated tech stack and for your software development lifecycle. And I hit upon governance. I want you to remember governance is important. Operations SecOps are also very important. Cloud-based, they're often they should be automated, and there's also a lot of tech around that. And you're also looking at integrating operations and SecOps across multiple environments. I've seen it across like one solution, two public cloud providers, and on-prem. And integration. You're integrating a lot of software. You need to build trust across that. You're also integrating into your operations and SecOps as well. And that ties into, you want to be able to build securely. Your build process needs to be trusted, and also that's building trust in your applications as well. So from product security, we come into the concept of zero trust. It's like, I have a piece of software. I want to connect to other pieces of software. I have to build trust in that. I have to do, I want to have secure communication. I want to have identity management, because I'm just not going to arbitrarily say, yeah, that's good. I don't have any worries about that. The other thing that comes into is the third party. We always emphasize over and over again third-party software. It's like you want your software to be in support, and you want to be able to patch it. You want to know what vulnerabilities are in there. You don't automatically assume that entities, internal, external, are doing that properly. The thing is, what I kind of hit upon is building trust. It's just like testing, right? Well, verifying is testing, if you think about it, of course. But this building trust requires additional resources and activities and planning. You need people, you need software, you need money, and you need to plan for it up front. Otherwise, you're not going to have that by default. It just doesn't happen by accident. Again, governance. So I come from enterprise architecture background, did some consulting, strategy consulting around that. And basically what that means is you pick and choose things that you want up front, the capability, and then you have various technical capabilities or business capabilities that you want to have in there. And so enterprise architecture is becoming more and more critical. It's not just your enterprise, but the expanded enterprise. CMMI, you have maturity around your processes, how you do things, and how do you keep improving it. Security standards, critical, ISO, NIST. My organization is really focused on NIST 800 standards. You pick and choose what's right for you. You get minimum, you want your minimum requirements. And I'll tell you that the hardest one here is being ready to tell a team or a business, we're not going to release your product because it's not secure enough. It doesn't conform to the standards. So that also means you have to have really good conformity standards, right? And evaluation is, verifying, is it there? And a governance team that's willing to say no. So we generally treat users untrusted. That's a very good starting point. Particularly now we're, again, public internet access. We want to get users around the world. We don't know what devices they have, how advanced, how much they've been clicking on stuff on the internet, and what malware is on their PC or phone or whatever. We don't trust any uploads at all. You may have to upload, but you want to have antivirus, right? Before you even touch the whatever file, you want to have it scanned, right? The other thing is sloppy credentials is the biggest problem. There's also user IDs and passwords are written down, stored in files and all, but at the very least you want to have some password complexities as well as user identity complexities. But pass 1, 2, 3, I've seen that a lot. So a lot of people are doing simple passwords, but if you have complexity controls in there, you kind of get away from that. But also multi-factor authentication, whether an SMS one-time code or a token that's tied into a smartphone. So always a secondary authentication. And the other key point is, and you guys, I was just having a conversation last night at dinner, there's a pushback often in organizations for automated testing, but there's a cost associated with it. Well, we also get that from security. We get pushbacks because there's cost. The other thing we get pushback for is, they want an easy user experience. Okay, that's fine. You want to, is there a business case? And so that's where I go now. Is if you say your users, you don't want them to be complicated by multi-factor authentication. Okay, what's your business case? How are you going to make money with that? So it gets into, you have to pick and choose what you want to use. The number one thing we focus on teams with is cataloging all the third-party software. So if you catalog all the third-party, then you should be able to manage when is this going out of support, what upgrades do they need, and also you get reports in about what vulnerabilities, what highs and critical vulnerabilities that are coming out, and then you know the impact to your organization and what do you need, say, emergency patch fixes for example. It's very important, this lifecycle management, I often tease that some third party is going to be going out of support in 2 years, and they want to have it as part of code base. I'm like, well, you got to have a plan of how you're going to migrate off of that or upgrade. And that also ties in with the open source model. Some are going to be very, open source is great. There's all different models of how they manage stuff, or whether things are the consortium behind that, the group, the community is just going to vanish, and the stuff is just not going to be supported anymore. So you have to really understand that, understand your risk around that. Again, third parties, a little bit more detail. You need processes for working with your third parties. Say external companies, how you evaluate your products, you want to have security criteria. It's like what is it important that you want to see this third-party vendor doing for you from a security standpoint? Are they going to give you patches on demand? Are they doing it the same security, trust, and verification, or same type that you're doing? So that's how you want to ask them. And the other thing is internal. that also doesn't mean trusted either. So you might have part of your organization, so okay, we have an existing app that's like 10 years old. Well, that's not going to be built with the same security standards that we're building today. It's going to be old. It's probably going to be out of support software. So you have to reevaluate it according to the standards that you're using. Is this appropriate or not? I also have a thing that I kind of get into a lot is multi-tenant. So when you're talking to third parties, ask, particularly as a software as a service, ask them if it's multi-tenant. Are you multi-tenant? And then, okay, how are you doing my data isolation? How are you making sure that one tenant is going to impact me? And so that's another interesting question to go and ask. And lift and shift to the cloud. So there's, I'm coming from a product perspective, a product company, but this is the same for enterprise as well, is if you have software that you want to have cloud-based because easier access to your organization as well as it's a managed hosting environment, something that's been built on-prem, often people say it's sort of trusting the environment because it's running inside a network and firewall. It's not exactly true. We don't really believe that. But once you go to a cloud, particularly as public access, you really need to reassess your security controls to see if it can defend against an internet attack. Now you're opening up to like distributed denial of service attacks, for example. But attackers, from many parts of the globe can look at it and go against it. And weak security controls, pretty much what I've seen is an environment, a cloud-based account that's not being protected because it's accidentally exposed. It basically gets owned or controlled in about like 36 hours, I think, what I've seen, and that's by bots. So if you have, you can't trust what was existing as being appropriate anymore from on-prem when you go to cloud. You also need to work out your compliancy, and the big one I run into is, this is reassessing, is bad security habits, hard-coded credentials from deployment as well, deployment scripts, weak transport layer security. So like we don't want 128-bit encryption, we want 256, or we want encrypted communication. And again, to hit on this old third party, is the stuff still in support? Are we at the last? Is everything at the right release levels? So something else that's coming, again, the multi-tenancy. And also multiple apps coming together, running in one environment, and multi-country. I'll hit on multi-country, but it's something I'm dealing with right now is it's about compliance, HIPAA compliance, GDPR compliance. From healthcare, there's a lot of countries that it's in country for country. Germany, for example, they don't want any of their healthcare data leaving their borders. So if you want to go multi-tenant with an application, you have to be certain that it can run across these multiple countries. Even inside the UK, Wales, Scotland, England have different rules about their data protection. So you really need to do this upfront work. And because the whole thing around multi-tenancy is people are thinking, oh, we're going to save a lot of money on operations and our infrastructure. We don't have to have a separate account and all, and we'll save this money. It's all about profit, right? Nothing wrong with that, but you have to make sure you're doing it right and you know what it's about. And the operation complexity increases dramatically, is what I see, because now you have to manage tenants, right? It's not just one customer. You're going to add new customers. You're going to delete customers. You have to fix a customer, right? Well, one of the tenants. And then often when you're dealing with your environment, you have to do migrations and all. And so operations, you have to have your operations really prepared. I always tell teams, just go think maturity, steps, define how mature you want to be, which is basically translates into cost savings, right? But the one thing is to be understanding infrastructure cost is a set cost. It's kind of easy. Engineering to develop stuff that you not really have experience in, that's kind of that can be an unknown risk, by the way, and maybe you don't get it as good as the public cloud provider does. Building cloud to on-prem trust, this is a big one. And also, it's not just cloud to on-prem, it's also Internet of Things. So really what we get into is mutual authentication, mutual TLS. So when you have a basic browser app and you're connecting into some internet-based app, you're verifying that the server is the trusted server, and that's what you're doing. The server side doesn't really trust the clients, doesn't know the clients. Mutual authentication means that basically the client and the server have certificates, and they can each verify that the other one is trusted through the certificate authority, where the certificates come from. That's a simple way of explaining it, but basically each party knows who the other party is, and that's really important when we're connecting to on-prem. And again, we don't trust downloads or uploads, we do scans. And security logging is something else that's very critical, where we say, here's the activities that have happened both sides, and so you can basically correlate if an attacker has gone from on-prem to the cloud and vice versa. I'm going to go through this very quickly. This is about just an example of how things will get more complex. Two concepts, trust boundary and attack vector. Trust boundary is when we go across the internet, this is where we have to build trust. Attack, how attackers get in. We see our on-prem application as we go public hosted, there's more opportunities for attack. Hybrid, which is we keep our database on-prem. Again, we see more attack opportunities. We have multi-tenant, just represented the 3 tenant user bases. Again, more attack vectors. Multi-tenant hybrid, where we're now connecting up our 3 tenants on-prem. So there's more and more opportunities to get in and more weaknesses. This is the last slide, but again, this actually isn't really fully representing what we see. The complexity is where are our weaknesses here. Now we have our solutions made of multiple applications here, and each of them have weaknesses, can allow an attacker to navigate through our overall solution and potential tenant base. It's just to give you an idea of complexity of where things go. Trusted DevSecOps. So 2 things here. You need to be thinking about security from your software development lifecycle, from development through to build and deployment and into operations. That's what that's about. That all has to be secure coming together. The other thing that you need to consider as well is how you verify trust and security of your applications you're building. So you want to make sure your source code is coming from a trusted environment. You want to have all your third-party software, you have copies of it that came from the original source. You don't want to have links going out to GitHub or Docker Hub and pulling down whatever stuff. You want to know exactly what you're bringing down, and because you want to have a copy that's stored, and it's probably signed from the original producer. You want to know what will be deployed, have a scheduling of when you're going to deploy stuff, what is all out there, what's going to be the change, and also how are you going to migrate as well too. And automate how all this stuff is working, because humans do make mistakes, and sometimes humans do things they shouldn't be doing, let's put it that way. And processes and policies are very important. And the other thing related is, what we have is, before we do a release, we'll scan our containers, and if there's any old third parties that have critical vulnerabilities, we stop the build process. So that's the other thing, is building that security in your deployment, and doing your own checks, that things, verifying that the trust in the security is there through that build process. Trusted operations. Again, this is on the inside of it. You want to automate. It's a lot of software. There's a lot of pieces of software involved here that you want to pick, and you basically want to buy your operations software, to be honest. You don't want to try to build these things. And I would say from a security standpoint, a few key things is you need to have backup and recovery capabilities, and you need to test them. I've seen places that didn't test it. So I tell teams you have to test, you have to actually run a restore. Each release should have a rollback plan. How do you roll back the software? And rolling back data is harder than rolling back executables. But you need to plan for that, and teams need to manage that. Backup recovery, so that's a defense against a ransomware attack. And rolling back is, if something's gone wrong with the release and things you have to go back to a good state. The other thing is, if you have a nice rollback plan, you're not going to have people playing around in your production environment trying to fix things on the fly and breaking things even more. So it comes down to the final thing. What I say is, why should your customers trust you? So, and again, this could be external customers selling a product, but as a lot of you are probably have your own verbiage inside your enterprise, as your customers, as your user base in the business. And so, no one's perfect. Product security is basically constant improvement. There's constant new ways of attacking things, and we have lots of third parties, either entities, companies we're going to communicate with for software as a service connections or code, etc. So you're going to have problems. Be constantly planning on how you're going to fix stuff, how you're going to upgrade. So that's the important thing, because right now, like our customers, they're either hiring researchers are volunteering their time. They're basically scanning the binaries. They're scanning cloud-based APIs. They're hiring cybersecurity engineers to evaluate all the things that they have, and they're going to come back and ask stories. They ask about what vulnerabilities are in the product, and they're doing this more and more frequently. I kind of say, yeah, stuff happens, right? The lasting impression is the reaction. So we've seen some big cyber attacks out there that are very public, and we've seen some companies that didn't respond very well. Others did. They actually gave out what was licensed software. They gave it out for free. Microsoft did that with WannaCry and patches to, I believe, Exchange. And so that was a good response from them. So how you respond is very important, and you're going to be evaluated by that. They're also going to, like I said, they're going to ask about third parties. They're going to look at things. The other key thing is, I would say, is get all the simple security stuff in place, like TLS, transport layer security, is 1.2, which is basically 256-bit encryption, which is like the standard. 128 is not good enough. So if you don't have basic security stuff in place, they're going to be really concerned whether you have anything more complicated that you can deal with, or even do you have a SecOps that you can respond. They're going to be really looking at your SecOps and operations, particularly if you have someone like me who's had to deal with this stuff. I'm going to ask how automated is their operations. Do they have key events in their applications? Is it coded in there like we have for the athlete medical system for Tokyo Korea Olympics? I had the teams basically identify key administrative events that would occur and to push that up into SecOps and send it out to pager duty whenever someone uploaded a file for new users, for example. These are questions I would ask a company for, and I do ask companies dealing with. And so the ultimate question comes down to, or the ultimate thing is, when you partner with an existing company that's dealing with you, that's implemented your software, they're going to work with you and try to work through the problems, because to replace you is very hard. But new ones, they're trying to build trust with you. And a new customer, if you're not doing the basics right, well, they're not going to have any trust in you, and you're just going to walk away. So you're losing this opportunity for new business. I think that's it, what I have. Kind of ran through a little bit quickly. I'm sure they're going to share the slides. So questions?
We have questions. Thank you very much. It was impressive. And
thanks.
So 20 minutes is not enough for cybersecurity, and 55, so any questions? Just one question, please. Oh. No question? Okay, then I have just one question.
Okay.
It's a huge area, I mean, cybersecurity. How can we introduce DevSecOps or any kind of cybersecurity into a middle-sized company? What would you suggest?
So I guess it's always, there are a lot of companies that provide service for operations because it is complex to do, and it's growing more and more. So I've seen smaller entities basically I would hesitate to use outsourcing, but it's basically getting a SecOps service, and then also operations service for the cloud hosted. So for smaller companies, that's what they can do. The other thing I didn't really talk about too much is, so if you are building your software, what you should do is, and we do a lot for ours, is hire third-party companies, these cybersecurity testing companies. They do what's called a penetration test. Yeah. And they evaluate your product, and they test it, and they try to break it and do simulated attacks, and then they tell you all the stuff you did wrong and how to fix it. And that's really critical, because I guess the one thing is, I don't know how many startups are here, but you're a small startup, and you now invested your whole life for a couple years and a ton of money and time to build something, and if it's vulnerable to attacks, you're over as a company. So to invest, like, say, $50,000 in a company to do a test to see how secure you are, it's invaluable. And the other thing, you can communicate to your customers that you have done a penetration test.
Just one question, and the last one, and 3 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Faisal. The question regarding the security, so I have two questions, but I will combine it. So, for example, if I'm using third-party tools for security or for cross-browser compatibility, for example, the tool is also cross-browser compatible app. They use tunneling, and they can bypass the firewall So how to tackle with these third-party security tools? They can also be a threat to security. And combining it with third-party security companies. For example, we are handling our product to them for the security checks. So there is also a trust issue.
Yes.
So how to handle this?
I take a simple approach, like best of breed. So, well, not just me, but my organization. So for monitoring cloud-based, CrowdStrike is like a standard out there. You know, there's Splunk for logging. So logs are critical for security and anything else. And another thing with logs, you don't want them to be tampered with. So your log management has to be secure. And so we use Splunk as well. So yeah, it's kind of like you really want to evaluate who you're dealing with, that they're actually going to provide security and not other weaknesses. One of the things, it's in my presentation, but touching upon it, is analytic tools. You don't want free analytics for your browser stuff because they collect, we've seen with one, a team brought it to my attention, they're collecting a lot of user data that they shouldn't be, but it was a free service, you know, and sort of like, well, no, you don't want free services, you want to pay for the stuff because now you can control what data is going to them. So you always want to pick and choose and know exactly what data is going out. You know, just really, do I have a couple minutes?
No, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, if someone, yeah, there's an example about internet-connected bathroom scales and how there's unencrypted communication and they're sending a lot of personal details, PHI, back to whatever the home entity, and also a lot of information about the whole networks. Your whole household network was being sent back. So you want to know what people are taking from you, and so if you're using them, what do they provide, and what are they taking from you as well? But thank you for that question.